Hello, it is I, the Jester Mask, and I have some questions for you. Do you want your players to have anxiety for the rest of their life? Do you want them to be suspicious of each and every piece of furniture that you over describe?
A single chair holds the center of the room.
Can you please tell us about the chair? How many legs on this chair?
There's gotta be something about this chair.
Do you want them to have a little witty baby mimic they can have as a pet and feed little coins as they call it cute names?
Yeah, we're talking about mimics. Mimics have been a classic of D&D and any other fantasy medium that you can imagine, ever since Gary Gygax decided to make man-eating boxes. They usually are that one surprise encounter that happens in a treasure room or a similar space. From that point on forward, your party will forever remember what you did and will be suspicious of you and will look at you with murderous eyes each and every time they find a chest. But other than that, unless you're a psychopath,
Like me.
they're no more than an anecdote. So what do you do if your party decides that they want to learn more about this mimic that they found? Or how do you integrate them more frequently into your games? Once again, this is not meant to touch anything regarding the lore of the monster, just some key features and ideas that can make them fit in any of your games. With that said,
Let's make a quest.
first of all, where are we? I believe that these situations would unfold very differently depending on your location. It all depends if you are in the wilderness or an urban area. That's the only distinction that you need to make. Why? Well, think about it. How the mimic got there are vastly different questions depending on the setting.
How did I get here?
On the wilderness, the mimic might be searching for food.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Maybe it got lost from its colony. More about that later. While in the urban area, you don't just find a mimic by accident. Someone must have planted it there. With that in mind, let us set the stage. We're going to think about these two scenarios. The wilderness. Imagine with me. Your party is walking through the woods. There's no one around and your phone is dead. Shia LaBeouf. Sorry, I meant. Maybe their objective is to reach the next town, or they're looking for something there. It doesn't matter. The point is that they have to cross this wilderness, and at any point in time they will have to make a perception check. That's when you give them the chance to find this special encounter. The mimic would place itself where it knows it will attract adventurers, or at least prey of any kind. It can simply be a chest if you feel like it, but do not limit yourself. It could be a tree stump, a rock, a sign with gibberish written on it. But there is one thing you must take into account. It must be, or be close to, something that is very attractive to the adventurers. If you make it too mundane, they might just pass it by. Consider giving it something interesting it can use as bait. Maybe it left a stack of coins on purpose. I don't know, tempt your party with the things that you know that they will fall for. And in case you need a hand to set it up, there. Potential hiding and bait of the wilderness. Now your party, being greedy as per usual, will fall for this bait. And then, mimic attack. Oh no! Who could have seen this one coming? Pause right there. Here's the first moment where you have to make a clear distinction.
Is this mimic dumb, or is it big brain?
You see, the monster manual barely touches on the subject, but mimics do have the potential to be able to speak. And if all the additions are to be respected, those would actually be the most common kind. What does this mean? Well, for starters, the mimic does not want to die. So, if it's a smart boy, it can negotiate. Mimics are neutral creatures, so they have attacked in the first place because what they see before them is a source of food. But if your party starts beating its ass, that's when they switch their strategy. You could have it exchange any valuable items its previous diner had, plus some information. What items, you say? You know me. But the most important part is the information. The book even clearly states that it can tell you about anything in exchange for food. So what information could be useful for the party here? Well, the mimic could tell the party about a nearby dungeon that they can explore and loot. Thing is, this dungeon is actually
The Mimic Colony!
A mimic colony is an amalgamation of mimics that decided to help one another to construct one cool place. When they merge, they all still hold their individuality. Imagine joining a Minecraft server with a single-minded purpose of making a believable town. But you can only build one item per player. Johnny made a nice house, Felix made a giant meatball, and George made a chair. Okay, that's great. Good start. Now add other 30 or so players and follow the same instructions. In essence, that's a mimic colony. When this happens, all mimics gain sentience and a form of telepathy. Plus, they get layer actions if shit goes down there. And boy, do we want that to happen.
Excuse me, but how do we manage to give all of this information if the mimic is dumb or slayed?
I'm glad you asked, you handsome average stranger. That's a simple solution. Loot! Give the mimic a map that points out the location of the dungeon. I would also add a mimic compass, a mimic's organ that tells you the general direction of the closest colony. My justification for such a thing?
The telepathic bond.
It makes sense to me, the idea that a mimic in the wilderness would have come from a larger mimic that is part of a colony that is close by. And now it's your choice what this mimic colony does with the players. If it's hostile, it would pretend to be a regular dungeon until they are deep inside. If it's not hostile, maybe it needs help. Maybe a parasite crawled inside and it's afflicting the entire colony, making a few of them inside a hostile since they are disconnected from the colony bond. These hostile mimics could scale in size and challenge as you delve deeper until you reach the root of whatever is severing their bond, thus making them go feral. Plus, I love the idea that while your party is delving into the dungeon, maybe the mimic entrance or some other mimic just appears from the wall to tell the player some input or simply to talk.
Hey, how you doing, guys? You need anything? You want a snack?
It may offer safe passage or a safe room to rest at some point, kinda like the equivalent to a checkpoint. The inside of the layout is completely up to you. Maybe there are some ruins they used as foundation. The urban area. Imagine with me once again, your party managed to track the guild of thieves or whatever. Of course this guy would have a room full of treasure. And once they find it, they might quite possibly check for traps. And that's the moment that you're waiting for. The owner of this treasure trove knew what would happen, and they trained or made a deal with a mimic to protect this place in particular. In this case, it can literally be anything in the room. The chest they are opening, the wall behind it, the barrel on the side, the floor, the ceiling. Anything can be a mimic. But just for the sake of being fair, let's say your party could have a chance to get some clues about the mimic's presence by making a perception or investigation check in this instance. Maybe some booze bottles were left behind. Maybe there is some blood splatters in weird shapes near one of the objects. Maybe there is an ominous tray of very healthy fruit snacks. Why are all the clues related to food in some way? Because that's how a smart mimic trades. I mentioned it before, but a mimic could have a lot of things it'd be willing to give away for the right price, and by price I mean a meal. So here, have a table to see what's the preferred food of this particular mimic. Do you need this? Not really, just say any food that you find funny at that moment and that's it. It's just in case you're caught off guard. Now, the encounter plays out exactly like scenario 1, either fight to the death if it's hostile or it negotiates for its life. But now we find ourselves with a new question. Why and how did this get here? Is there a black market for mimics? Are they harvesting a bigger mimic somewhere else? How does this particular mimic feel about this? Does it even remember what happened? Here are some of my ideas, but go nuts and create your own reasons. Why would someone have a mimic trafficking service? I'd even say that they got tampered with to make it more docile. Maybe they extracted that organ we mentioned before, cutting it from the connection it had with the colony. If you want to make this more interesting, they could start hearing rumors about them. How people have been randomly disappearing in the streets, and also apparently somebody has been discarding weird furniture by the dogs and by the next morning they are no longer there. This could be the defective mimics that are exclusively feral, so they are not cut for selling. So they get discarded, and some poor soul that was just passing by just looks at a nice wardrobe and I was like, yeah, that would look really good in my house. My wife and kids are gonna be so glad to bring this. And well, and then they die. If they follow the clues, I'd say the party could stumble upon more and more mimics in this particular town or place. The closer they get to the source, the more dangerous the mimics they encounter. Maybe they get bigger and more abundant. Let's check some stat blocks for bigger mimics in the monster manual. Yeah, well, there are none. Wait, what's this? Well, that's nice and very circumstantial. Horde mimics are very cool looking and are famous for striking a deal with anything that has a hoard of treasure, dragons being its favorite clients. I imagine one of these things would be riding on top of a Markov. The book says that this is among the oldest and most cunning mimics that you can find, but I doubt that this is where the mimics plateau. You could reskin one as a small house or something, but they do show one interesting aspect that we can take into account. Mimics get new skills the bigger and wiser they get. If only you could find a template somewhere that could allow you to customize your own mimics so you could use them with the size and skills that fit your own adventure. Ah, the drama. Well, would you look at that?
HP calculator, monster feats and skills, anything you need, right here, baby.
All of this and more random stuff that I came up with in a single document that you can find for free at the description of this video. Now all you need are some miniatures to go along with this. Oh, what? This? Don't mind it. It's just my Patreon. You know, the place where you can support me and all that. Plus you get some miniatures for doing so. The theme right now is mimics. Man, what a coincidence, right? Oh, wait, what happened with the goblins, you ask? They will remain in my Patreon for a while, for another month or so, until I open up my miniature store eventually. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, shit, the quest. Let's wrap both scenarios by saying they have reached the ending. They have found the source of the problem, and you have a great boss fight in front of you. Now there's one key feature you could apply in this scenario that is really important and cinematic. Layer actions! The boss fight will most likely be near the core of the mimic colony, and thus we can use this to pose a challenge to the players. But I would add one thing. Give them the chance to turn it around. Maybe if the mimic realizes that it's been rescued, or the party finds a way to reconnect the telepathic bond, they can turn this enormous hazard into a great asset mid-fight. Plus, I bet they would feel great with themselves if they managed to do this. If you were to ask me, I'd make it so the main enemy can somehow force the core of the colony to spawn a feral mimic that is a nerfed medium size or less. This would be a research skill that at the beginning of the turn it must roll a 6 on a d6 to get it back, like a breath weapon. If you think about it, this is a pretty challenging fight already, but I have a proposal: dynamic terrain. One of the layer actions that the colony has kinda does this already, but we can go further. Sharing initiative with the layer actions, since the terrain itself is alive, it could rearrange itself. I imagine 1d6 5e cubes would be more than enough, but they reset every turn. Just grab 6d6 or some Legos and place them in the battle map as you please. If you're a sadistic one and wanna use this as a pillar of meat that just does an Akira on one of the party members, I would say do it. Give it a dex save. On a fail, it counts as a large pseudo-bot attack and it moves the player an equal number of feet. Now, I could end the video right there. Big fight and bada bing bada boom, quest done. But there's a special reward your party can get out of all of this. They could get their own lair, their own house with mutating furniture. Think about it. What would be better for them than to ally with a mimic colony and it becomes a sentient mansion that the party can go back to and relax? Don't they deserve that? Like, come on, man, please, let them have a house. I just want to rest under a roof that feels like my own, please. Sorry, getting an apartment has been a hassle in the last few days. But you get one. We moved out, we're happy. But if that feels like too much, there's another option aside from the pile of loot that the mimics would have. A juvenile mimic. Look at this little fella. Isn't it cute? Come on. Imagine this cute little chest turning into a piggy bank, or a small little chest, or a tea kettle, or a small coin purse, and it just hangs from your belt and you can hear it purr when you put coins inside. It would be so cute. Pet mimics are a great thing to provide to a party, but they also have a great potential as NPC assets as well. Picture this. A traveling merchant whose card is actually a mimic. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Not only it's a great guard dog, it can digest any of the magic items, so it makes for a great storing place. And thus, we have reached the end of the video. And once again, I have made another list of magic items, because I'm a masochist. I hope you had fun with this one. I sure did, it was pretty fun. And remember, if you want me to work with any of the monsters out there, or you'd like to tell me about how you use any of this in any of your games, let me know. Write a comment about it. Pester me in social media or whatever you prefer. If you want to keep up to date with what I do, subscribe maybe if you feel like it. Just be respectful with one another, give your pet some love, and rest and relax. You deserve it. Bye!